Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What are we getting into today?
Well, today we're tackling Hannah Arendt.
Ooh, interesting choice. Her work is, pretty intense.
It is, but also, I think, incredibly important, especially these days.
Yeah.
We've been digging into this article about her life and work.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, her concept of the banality of evil has really been stuck in my head.
Yeah, I can see why it's one of those ideas that just kind of stays with you.
For sure. And, there's this one quote from Arendt that I keep coming back to. It says, "The purpose of constant lie is not to make people believe a lie, but to ensure that no one believes anything."
Mm.
A people who can no longer distinguish between truth and lie cannot distinguish between good and evil. Like, whoa, right?
Yeah, heavy stuff. And feels, well, pretty relevant right now, don't you think?
100%. It's kind of scary how much it resonates.
Absolutely. And to really grasp the weight of that quote, it helps to know the context. Ernst wasn't just, like, theorizing here. This was deeply personal for her. She was reflecting on her experience covering the trial of Adolf Eichmann.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we're talking about, like, a key figure in the Holocaust.
Exactly. A high-ranking Nazi official directly involved in the machinery of the final solution.
So the systematic murder of millions, and yet this idea of the banality of evil, it almost feels like a contradiction in terms.
Right.
Like, how can something so horrific be banal?
That's exactly the point Arendt is making, and that's what makes it so disturbing. Because Eichmann, he wasn't this, like, monstrous figure many expected. He came across as very ordinary, like a bureaucrat.
Really?
Yeah, he even claimed, like, he was just following orders,
Wow.
It was almost as if he lacked any real understanding of the enormity of what he'd done. He seemed to have, like, compartmentalized it all.
So aren't saying that anyone, even someone seemingly ordinary, can become caught up in evil acts, especially if they don't, question what they're doing.
Exactly. It's about losing sight of the moral consequences of your actions. Getting so caught up in the system that you become like a cog in a machine, and that's where the banality comes in.
It's almost more terrifying to think that this kind of evil could exist in anyone.
Exactly. It really makes you question, human nature.
It does, and it makes Arndt's insights all the more powerful, considering she lived through this firsthand. I mean, the article mentions that she fled Nazi Germany, right?
She did.
Ended up in the U.S.
Yeah.
And became this leading voice on totalitarianism.
Yeah.
It even mentions that she worked for the Aufbau newspaper,
Oh, wow.
which is crazy to me because my grandparents read that same paper when they first came to America.
What a connection. It really brings it home, doesn't it?
It does.
And it makes you think about how those personal experiences must have shaped her work, especially her most famous book, The Origins of Totalitarianism.
Right. I mean, that book draws directly from her life under Nazi rule.
Right, it does. And in it, she really breaks down the mechanisms of totalitarian regimes, like how they use propaganda
Oh, yeah.
to manipulate people, how they instill fear to silence any dissent, and ultimately how they erode the very idea of truth.
And that part is what's so scary. Because don't we see those same tactics being used today, too?
It's definitely something to think about. I mean, you see the spread of misinformation, the attacks on the free press.
Exactly.
It's like right out of Arendt's playbook, and that's why her work is still so relevant. She saw how fragile truth can be.
And how easily it can be manipulated.
Right. And once that happens, well, it paves the way for all sorts of horrors. Which brings us back to that quote about the purpose of a lie.
Yeah. Making sure no one believes in anything anymore.
Because when that happens, you can't tell right from wrong, good from evil.
Right. And Arendt, as a Jewish woman who escaped the Nazis, I mean, she understood that connection better than most.
She did. She saw that link between totalitarian thinking and dehumanization. The kind of dehumanization that makes something like the Holocaust possible.
So where does that leave us? Is this idea of the banality of evil something we should still be worried about today?
It's a question we should all be asking constantly.
Right.
Are we questioning the information we're given? Are we holding our leaders accountable? Are we aware of that cog in the machine mentality, even in our own lives?
It's a lot to consider.
It is. But these are the kinds of questions Arendt forces us to confront.
I think that's a good place to leave it for today. We've just scratched the surface of Arndt's ideas, but hopefully this deep dive has given everyone something to think about.
Definitely. Her work is always worth revisiting.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.